What are some of your line in the sand values that are like, this is it, like this is what I believe, and no matter what you say to me, I cannot adjust this, I can't monitor this, sort of like picking up the trash on the runway.
Yeah. So I mean, I would say, what's really present for me is sort of like the ones we're having as a team as we
Hmm.
operate. And so I don't know if you know the movie like The Lorax or the book that now
Hmm.
is a movie, the
Yeah,
Dr.
yeah,
Seuss.
yeah.
So like bettering and bettering instead of biggering and biggering. So like a constant thought around bettering. Like I won't do something again because it's easy unless I do it better than the time before. And so I have literally killed projects and ideas in the company. If it's just like, hey, we went to this place, we hosted the event, it was great. I'm like, will it be better when they come back? Like I have like 20, the event you came to in Hilton Head, I have like 20 things we're gonna do to upgrade it the next time.
Mhm.
And if I can't do it better, I'm just not gonna do it.
Welcome, Third Rock listeners, to the Branding Laboratory. I'm your host, Deevo, Chief Experience Officer for the Brand Storyteller and the Fusion Creative Brands. And each week, I have the privilege of speaking with extraordinary leaders and entrepreneurs who are reshaping the way industries work. These conversations go way beyond the surface to explore the core philosophies, the lessons, and the challenges that define the brands that we admire today. And one of the greatest rewards of this podcast is the opportunity to share the insights of some of the brightest minds in business, people who are passionate about pushing boundaries and redefining what's possible. And as I always say, the stories we tell are the brands we build. And this show is a testament to the power of that concept. Let's dive in. Welcome back to the Branding Laboratory, all of you people from Third Rock. I'm Devo, your host, and today we're going to dive into a conversation about breaking free from systems, I guess is a good way to say it. Um, but more importantly, breaking away from things that don't inspire us anymore and things that are confining to us and redefining leadership, connection, and purpose. And our guest today is Hollis Carter. He is the CEO of Baby in the Bathwater. They are a very unique, one of a kind entrepreneurial leadership retreats. And I've been to one, so I know. It's a space where entrepreneurial leaders come together to connect, to grow, to share experiences. And Hollis's journey isn't your typical corporate to entrepreneurship story. He's been an entrepreneur most of his life, from software companies to landscape companies to really just kind of been in that bubble his entire life and had some fantastic success doing it. And I think what we'll hear from him today is his entrepreneurial journey was about taking risks and challenging norms and creating a community that fosters genuine relationships and impactful leadership. And if you were to see some of the people that he surrounded himself with in these bathwater retreats, you would certainly understand that more importantly. What I want you to take away from this episode is how someone can transition from structured, predictable world of whether it's corporate life or just doing something that's uninspired to the messy, unpredictable, but incredibly rewarding if you do it right world of entrepreneurship. And by the end of this conversation, I hope you'll be inspired to reflect on your own journey and your own leadership and how you might break free from what might potentially be holding you back. Before we dive in, I want you to remind you to like, subscribe, share this podcast. Your engagement helps us bring more raw and insightful conversations like Hollis and leaders to the show. And if you're curious about uncovering your personal brand blueprint, here's my shameless plug. Please visit thebrandstoryteller.com. That's my company. We will help you refine and originate and create your brand message so that you can connect with a larger audience of people that are in line with what you're trying to do with your world. So I'm really excited about that. And I'm really excited about today's guest. So let's bring him in and let's get to it. And welcome to the show, man. I appreciate you being here today. I just did a little introduction on you. Um, One of the things that we're going to talk about today is sort of breaking free from this mold of traditional leadership, this model that we've always been taught, whether it's the corporate journey or whether it's doing something that's just sort of like confines you, right? And so you epitomize that in your journey from what I know about you, but I'm going to learn a little bit more about that. So welcome to the Branding Laboratory, man.
Awesome, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. So I've had a little bit of experience with you. I've known you for a few years. Um, first and foremost, I was doing some research of my own, trying to figure out how do I create a community of like-minded professionals and entrepreneurs and purpose-driven leaders, so that I noticed that my crowd, when I first reached out to you, I think this was about 5 years ago, my crowd really was not inspiring me, whether it was my peer group or my friends or the masterminds that I was in. I just sort of felt like I was kind of always like the leader of the pack, and I wasn't surrounding myself with the right type of people. So I set out on this curiosity adventure to find people like you, and they came across Baby in the Bathwater, and I was like, dude, this is literally like everything I've been looking for. So thank you for that. I just went to my first event last in October this past
Yep.
year. Completely blown away by the just everything. I mean, honestly, the relationships and the people and the format and the context of it, just completely blown away. So I'd like to just jump right in with that point, if you don't mind. Your
Yeah.
story. How did you come up with this concept for Baby in the Bathwater?
So I would say the most interesting piece is like we never intended for this to be a business. It was one of those things that just kind of took on a life of its own with a little experiment. And I think the reason it has a little bit different culture and feel than some of the typical masterminds and groups out there is we didn't set out with like a business plan and a niche market and all those things. It was more of a reaction to kind of a scratch your own itch kind of situation where prior to starting the Baby Bathwater Institute, I had been kind of a lifelong entrepreneur, starting when I was like 12 years old as a dyslexic kid who didn't fit into school. My dad got me like a J. Abraham direct response book and a lawnmower, and I was able to grow that into a company before I even had a driver's license, where he's like, dude, you're making more than your teachers. But I like loved the hustle. I learned knocking on doors and putting out flyers and like all the little things as a kid. And I went from very unconfident kid who was told basically that you're dumb in school in the traditional format because it was just really hard for me to like a lot of confidence when I was like, oh, this is what happens when you get out of school and I'm doing it now.
Hmm.
And so that was like a pretty cool intro into entrepreneurship where like since a very young age I've always been thinking that way and like quote unquote unemployable. And my parents were really rad that way. Like my brother, amazing student, that traditional path was good for him and they fostered that and encouraged it. But for me, it was like, ooh, that isn't going to work. How can we help foster, that side? Um, and yeah, I think I was always into that. And so the interesting thing, I grew up in Georgia. And in Georgia, they give you the Hope Scholarship, which gives you free college if you're like a state student to stay in school in the state. And that caused me to go to college where I think if that didn't exist, I probably would have been like, nah, I'm already on this entrepreneur path. I'm not going to do it. But they're like, hey, this costs a lot of money and it's free. You should just knock it out. And it was probably the biggest hurdle of my life. Was funny. It was just staying in that for 4 years, which and now as time goes on, like 4 years is like nothing. But that felt like the longest period of time, and I was starting so many hustles. I remember I got a freelance job delivering flowers so that I could manage college bands and not have to use my own gas money to go to all the bars and drop CDs and do all that stuff. And I was managing the bands and getting the records made, like doing all that kind of stuff, and always just figuring out my kind of loopholes to be hustling because school just so did not satisfy me. Um, then this crazy thing happened with me and my college roommate. We saw one of those ads that's like make $100,000 from home, in your underwear doing nothing or whatever. And there was a address on the ad, and it was pretty close to us. So we drove down there and met with the guy, and we're like, "This sounds too good to be true. What's the deal?" But this was like early, early days of internet marketing, and it was like one of the guys who bought a business in a box. He was a total awesome dude, but he was just trying his best to do this hustle. And we worked with him for a bit, and I learned that game from him really well. And so before I had graduated, me and my roommate had started like messing around with affiliate marketing and building email lists. And this is back when like people were afraid to put their credit card in online.
Right.
Um, and which now makes me feel old. I'm going to be 40 next month, which is never an age has hit me that I was like, oh gosh, that feels old, but it's feeling that way. Um, and I think the biggest epiphany that happened there is like I started to make like real money when we started to figure that out. But it still wasn't a business, and I didn't know that yet. it was like cash flow stuff. Like we would sell this thing, we do this webinar. I was selling athletic greens back when it was a teeny little thing with email lists and stuff. Um, and so once we learned that game, we figured out how bad we were at business because we screwed up our taxes. We didn't realize the money that came in you had to pay taxes on. We had to start hiring people to help us, and we were just really terrible at it. The breakthrough for me happened when I went to my first like in-person live event. And it was actually a pretty terrible event, and the content was not good. It wasn't like a really eye-opening experience from what I learned for what you paid for the ticket. But what I got was like a few conversations in the lobby with people who were further along, and it just skyrocketed my success because, being a non-typical learner, hearing from stories of, oh, this is how I built this thing, this is how it worked, like those entrepreneurial stories from people who are like 10 years ahead of me, it was pivotal. And I remember latching onto that. Like I had just found the Bible. I'm like, I'm going to go to every business, marketing, personal development conference ever. I'm just going to sit in the lobby and talk to people. And I did do that for like a decade. And I ended up building a publishing company, a software company, a bunch of things that totally didn't inspire me. But what inspired me was building like an actual business and like finding a product market fit and bootstrapping it to seven figures pretty quickly. And I got really good at that 0 to 7 figure kind of business model. And I can attribute like 99% of like paying for masterminds, conferences, and all these things. So, kind of that long story to lead to how we got our name and we started is once I actually sold a business and had hit a stage of like actually now knowing how to run a company and do all this stuff, I realized like my attention span for anything was like 3 years max, and that's not long enough to build something super real. And that's because I wasn't like really into what I was doing. Like I didn't care about the software stuff. I didn't care about the stuff I was publishing. They were all just means to an ends because I wanted to be able to spend time in the mountain skiing and be like a successful entrepreneur. But I looked back in like a reflective stage about it. What was the most important and impactful thing to me was meeting rad individuals who've done it in their own way that I took stories, nuggets, and connections from that I was able to implement in my own life, not from courses and books and keynotes and things like that. And so the baby in the parable, kind of saying about don't throw the baby out with the bathwater was like the conversations and the really cool people I met in a decade there. The bathwater was how much I spent on content I didn't care about, going to hotels and fluorescent lights in conference rooms that I didn't want to be in, and all of that. And so my co-founder and I were like lobby buddies for like a decade, and we had both got out of our businesses that had hit about the point where we could take it as far as we could, and we got out of them. And we just started throwing like our first event, and we invited the people we met in those lobbies for 10 years, said, hey, we want to control this very clunky and inefficient thing that exists for business owners and entrepreneurs, which is like networking. It's almost like an ick word in a way.
Mm.
It's full of status and transactions and all this stuff, but it's like something everybody does. And I was like, maybe if we actually curate it and we don't have sponsors and we don't have sales pitches and back ends and we bring people who really do just want to connect, like that feeling I got when I would meet, like my goal at every event was to meet one awesome person who could be like a true friend and person to like challenge me, support me, inspire me, and I could do the same for them. Like, could we just build that where the lobby is the actual focus
Mm.
versus these like kind of fake tricks people do with the keynotes that now you can just watch on YouTube anyway. Could we focus on that, the huge, true, genuine connection? Because there are such massive like if you talk to anyone who's been in business long enough, it's usually a partnership or a connection that was made that causes the hockey stick to happen, not grinding out 1,000 hours on something like you need to chop wood and carry water and do that. But usually those big leverage points happen from those perspective shifts or a connection that's made. And so that was really the focus, was just focusing on that and good people with good intentions. And also, I want to have a good time. Like this journey is long and it can be very serious and grindy. Like I wanted to have a good time and laugh about it. And doing that with my like, friends I did sports with and grew up with who had normal jobs, we couldn't giggle about the same things of like the fear of making payroll or like, oh my gosh, the ebbs and flows of the grinds and the peaks and the valleys of it. And so I really got rejuvenated by kind of putting those people together. But there was no intention to turn it into a business. That just sort of happened over time when people were like, when's the next one? How are
Mm.
you going to do it? And then we can get into that, if you want. But that was sort of the impetus was many businesses, 10 years of kind of being at a level of figuring it out and realizing that those connections, and it was almost always serendipity, which I was talking to a member yesterday. Like, I think your job is to manufacture the serendipity that you felt in your early stages. And, I really have been leaning into that because he just said that last weekend. I'm like, oh, yeah, that is kind of part of it.
There's so much to unpack what you just said. There was a couple of things I wrote down. There wasn't a niche. You just sort of followed a passion. You said scratching your own itch. And it's one of the things that I love most about being an entrepreneur, and something I learned a few years ago. I've hired a bunch of different coaches over the years trying to figure out how I scratch my own itch. And one of the
Hmm.
things that I always walked away with empty-handed was this vapid idea that I had to sort of fit into someone else's idea of what something should look like, right? My
Yeah.
skills and sort of like cutting off the things that made me passionate, the things that I wanted to scratch for my itch, and trying to fit into this predefined box for someone
Yeah.
else's ideas, right? And so I think one of the things that I love most, especially about what you just said and having seen it firsthand, is that you don't really have a niche. There wasn't any one type of person there, but what I did see when I was at this event is people that all of them, literally everyone I met, A was genuine, was you walk into some of these events sometimes and you sort of feel like this motherfucker thinks he's cooler than me. This motherfucker thinks like
Yeah.
his shit don't stink. There wasn't a
Yeah.
single person, and most of these people are multiple six-figure, seven-figure earners, by the way. I should just throw this in there for the
Mhm.
listeners. These are not like your just average schmoes that are attending these events. These are like giants, entrepreneurial giants that own multiple corporations or multiple brands, have had a massive amount of success like yourself, but they're coming here in a genuine capacity to connect with other people. And that's what I think was the most touching for me. In terms of the direction of this company, and before we go to the direction, sorry, let me back up. Because I tried to define it a lot of different ways when people ask me what it is. How would you define baby in the bathwater?
Yeah. So to your point of how there wasn't a niche, now that we've grown for 10 years, I've had to kind of define it. I would say for the first 10 years, we didn't even define it. We kind of let the mystery and sort of we called it like the current is strong. So, like that feeling you felt, that was something we architected by getting rid of the things that we didn't like that you felt at these events, of the people who think their shit don't stink,
Hmm.
and the status games and all that. And I spent, um, a year calling people who get paid, five-figure checks to come speak at events and be like, do you want to pay to come to one so you can be around peers instead of being, this traveling person who's the top guy. And, I know you're a good person and you also want a group. Like, you don't always want to be the person in that. And, they were used to a lot of people, like, you get the special badge and you go to the special dinner for the speakers and you do all these things. Ours was like totally democratized, where I was like, everybody gets the same housing package, same food package. We're going to do a full buyout, so we're only the people there. And like the first set was just creating that culture of everybody does have something to offer, but they don't know everything. Like, you know what you know and you know what you don't know. And that was a very important. I think any entrepreneur who's been in the game long enough knows they don't know shit. Because if I smelled that feeling that you were talking about, it was they just hadn't been in the game long enough to get their teeth kicked in enough times to know it's just like surfing or whatever analogy we use. Like, you're just duck diving. You get barreled every now and then, but for the most part, you're just swimming most of the time, and you don't know what kind of shitstorm you're going to wake up to when you open your phone. And when I could smell people who understood it and were grounded in it, because they realize it's like a marathon, not a sprint, and the landscape's always changing. I was like, oh, that's the culture I want. And those were those conversations I had in lobbies at terrible conferences and masterminds that helped me when I was building. Now that we have a sustainable membership, we have events on a regular basis that sell out. I've had a point now where I have a full team and I have to describe what we do. And that's, I give that caveat because building that culture first was very important versus like writing out a brand plan and going to market. Now I would say we serve a niche. that is undefined by industry, geography, age, race, color, all those things. Like it's very heterogeneous in that way. But we serve the founder who is in that grow and scale phase, which is very different than when you're just starting out, or if you're part of like a massive corporation that has boards of directors that you report to and things like that. These are people who own most of the equity of their company. They have people who report to them. They like carry a lot of responsibility. And we kind of pinpointed that they actually feel quite lonely often in that because like their capacity between their customers, their team, their peer groups that maybe they have through their family and things like that. Like they just don't have as much relatedness to
Mm,
the ebbing and flowing of their day-to-day life. And when they get around other people who have it, they just light up. I
mm,
always relate it to like if you get on a plane and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna take a nap, I'm gonna watch a movie, I'm gonna get ahead of work. But then you sit next to another person who's in a similar situation, and all of a sudden you talk from takeoff to landing because you're just geeking out about all the things. Like I'm trying to create those conversations that just light you up.
mm,
And so, how we would define it is a private membership community supported with, community resources and events. And that's what we do. We sell a membership and we sell events, and that is the big thing. Like actually, it's funny. We launch our new private community app 20 minutes after I get off this podcast for our members that we've been building for, a big thing. So I actually just sent everyone these amazing $50 coffee mugs that I just love to cheers and do when we launch the app because when we had the events going so well, people wanted to stay connected after the event. So we had a private Facebook group that's been running for a decade, but that's kind of run its course. So we just finished building like a very cool private membership community where they can, have their conversations, see the past content, and every time resources are shared, we store them there. And pretty excited to build that. But back to the longevity of it, I feel like we're just getting started, and those other business models I ran were way smarter from a scale and profit margin and all that. But this, I wake up excited, and without motivation, there's nothing. And so, yeah, pretty excited for the future of it. But now I can define it, but we never really had that definition at the beginning. I think that was part of our sauce.
mm. You talked about a 3-year expiration date on many of your other ventures, and now you're now in your 10th year with this. So I would say that you've sort of you talked about your attention span being sort of one of the reasons why you've moved on. And I find that to be a very common situation with most entrepreneurs who are successful,
Yeah.
by the way. And one of the things that I've sort of correlated that to is the passion piece of it. Your attention span is only correlatingly equal to the passion you have in the project you're doing. Would you agree with that?
Oh, huge. I mean, if you think our main job is being leaders, once you hit, like, we actually define that in, there was like a Forbes article that just came out about us. And it's like when people transition from entrepreneur to leader, like, we are responsible for bringing the energy. And if you don't wake up with a fire, like, I can tell if I want to snooze or not. Like, I haven't used an alarm in 10 years because I actually wake up early because I want to get ahead of the day because I'm into it. And I'm like fired up by it.
Mhm.
And I had to learn about myself with doing it when I had other businesses that could be almost overly systematized. Some of the chaos of always having the next live event coming, and my members are entrepreneurs like me who have random shit come. Like I have 3 or 4 calls of people who have some kind of emergency going on almost every day, and I'm just there trying to connect them with other people and help. So like I think the nature of the model, always having something interesting that's popping up in a new timeline, helps me stay quite motivated in it. But if the person who's listening to this is trying to figure out how to keep that energy, like that's the thing you got to watch. I think you got to watch, are you waking up excited? It's not going to be every single day. Some days it's just going to be a grind, but like it needs to be a sustainable, the passion is kind of an abused word, but you got to have some gusto that you're really into it, and you get excited when you talk about your thing. It's or else you could just go get a job and
Mhm.
then get rid of all the risks and things that come with being an entrepreneur. I think the other thing to be very cognizant of, which is where I get most of my energy, is like your interactions with people. So like I
Mhm.
have a rule, if I do a meeting with someone or like a vendor interaction or anything, and I don't leave that feeling better than I did going in, if I feel worse, there's so many people in the world and we
Mhm.
all are not the perfect matches for each other. Like it's such a limited time. You need to be getting exponential energy from the people you interact with.
Mm.
Even if you're talking about hard and crazy stuff that's like, you're dealing with issues, like you
Yeah.
need to have that kind of camaraderie.
I love that about your onboarding process. When I first applied to get some information about it, you personally, the CEO, interviewed me and had a candid, raw conversation with me about sort of who I was and what I believed in, what I wanted out of this experience. When you're in those spaces talking and you talk to so many people every day, I'm assuming there's a level of intuition that goes into this process. And I don't ever want to shortchange that. I think a lot of people think that when you say the word intuition, there's this sort of this woo-woo element to it.
Hmm.
And maybe you call it whatever you want, but there
Yeah,
certainly is. But like there's a fine line between pragmatism and intuition and sort of like how you define what you do and the impact you make. I'm assuming in your journey, it sounds like to me you've had a lot of sort of these woo-woo type of intuitive type of impacts that have guided sort of your North Star, if you will. Is that a fair statement?
for sure. And I think there's a bit of that. I mean, both of my parents were like psychologists, and so we talked about feelings and had conversations a lot and things like that. And I mentioned that 10-year run of meeting people, like the amount of people I met who I had a sense of, oh my gosh, I do not want to follow the path this person is on. It was almost like a sense of a lot of that, like signals of, oh, I don't want to go this path when I was figuring out what I wanted to do with my life and my time and all of that. Then the second part I think is like the concept of like the 10,000 hours. Like those are skills that can be honed. Like I make mistakes, especially at the beginning, lots of them where we let the wrong person in or we read the room wrong of what they wanted or whatever. And when you screw it up in our business, like one rotten egg does spoil the bunch,
Mm.
truly. And so we have to be very discerning and do that. But if I look now, 10 years of practice, not running a group, but being parts of tons of them and really like having my feelers out there. And now 10 years of doing these interviews, thousands of hours, thousands and thousands of hours of it, I think you can hone your craft. So whatever it is, if you're, say you're running a service business and you're installing roofs, like you start to get a sense of if the installers you're working with are going to be good. If, the first two times you screw it up and someone totally botches the job, you're like, oh, now I know those signals to look out for.
Mm.
I'm raising money for a real estate hospitality project. And luckily, I was in a real estate and hospitality project before. I remember we raised money from the wrong people and we had to deal with it down the line and we tried to shortcut it. Had I not taken those licks and put in that practice, that's real. And so, to the intuition thing, I think some people have it naturally, but anyone can learn it by putting in the time and having successes and failures along the way and seeing
Yeah.
how those interactions go.
And just sort of understanding learned behaviors and then picking up from those clues and then learning from them itself, right? I understand that.
Yeah, and exactly. Like, the interviews are really interesting because it is a bottleneck in the efficiency of our business to do those calls. But my main focus is like lifetime value, like
Hmm.
keeping people in for like my goal is not members for a year. My goal is members for 10. Like I want to grow with them and this to be the peer group that I invest in for my life.
Hmm.
So those calls, usually they're from a referral, and you can just smell when someone's intentions are wrong. Like we're really only going for one goal is like, what is the intention of this person to be in a community? Because there's groups that are transactional, there's groups that are just focused on learning. We're different. This is like a community where I want people to also participate and add value. We call it like competitive giving in a way. Like they're in it for the right intentions because there is levels to participating in these like business groups. And the basic level is transactional. You're coming, you want to get clients, you want to sell your services. There's plenty of groups out there that exist. They've been around for years and they'll never go away. Then there's like the second level, people share and add value, but it's totally with a motivation of getting something for themselves. And then there's this like third level that I'm watching the people who operate at that level, and that's what I'm trying to attract the most of, that whether there is something in it for them or not, if they're in a present interaction with you and they can help, they're gonna do it. And oddly, the wins that they get back are even so much bigger, but sometimes they're on a longer time horizon, and it's just like it's almost like a karmatic kind of faith in oneself that they're just bought in on it. And I think most entrepreneurs have to go through the stages to get to that. Because at the beginning, it's so like you got to get your footing and like kind of cover those Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and you don't even have the privilege of betting on the long game. Um, but it's always interesting to see the people who do it early because they have so much faith in just the fact that they're going to bring value to the world and they don't need to turn everything into a transaction. It's usually like, when someone has a big exit, their second company that they grind half as hard on because they have that breathing room is even better because they just
Mm,
focused on value and they have a longer timeline. And
mhm.
so like what I love is when I see early people who sacrifice themselves a little bit more to be valuable in the world, and it cuts that hockey stick because they're less short-sighted.
Mm. And that third level is your primary candidate. And I don't know if this is the term you're using, but as you were describing it, I sort of came up because people use this idea of servant leadership, and it's an overused model. I love that you reference Maslow, by the way. I look at that as sort of like a collaborative leadership model, that third tier. Is that a fair statement?
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. And I think leadership's like an interesting thing too, because I have so many people in our community who are leading their teams, their customers, that like they are the leader. But
Hmm.
then I see how leadership shows up in the community of like when things go awry for people in their businesses and they can help and do that in a collaborative fashion. Like, I mean, I had a call this morning that I took right up to the moment we got on it because I got a text. The guy's like, I need 15 minutes. And we were able to collaborate because I have some people on my phone who could help with the situation. Like he does PO financing for, companies with physical products. And he's like, hey, this one guy, I think I'm going to inherit his company because he had something happen in his life. Like, you don't even want to buy one of these companies at crazy deals. Like I literally know someone in my head who's working on the exact thing that you already have. That 15 minutes of collaboration could save you months of work and headache, but I just have to be available for it. And as we grow in leadership roles, our time gets more finite.
Hmm.
So I think there is a really fine balance to being a good collaborative leader and understanding your boundaries of how you take care of the things you need to take care of for yourself so that you can be a collaborative leader. There's this like other version I see, and it's a very delicate line where you spend so much time collaborating, helping you forget to take care of yourself. So that like the conscious level of being good at being in a place where you're available to help. And then being open to doing it, whether there's something in it for you or not. That's like it's felt and it's real. And it's just like you mentioned at the beginning, when you go to some of these conferences and you put your name tag on, you just kind of hope it all works out and you're sniffing everybody out. It's like it's got the ick factor pretty
It's a meat
hard.
market to me.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so I think life's too short to deal with that. And ours our community is definitely people in this certain stage, but I think people could do the exact same model we're doing for every stage of the game.
Mm.
I've just picked the stage that works for me because it's the stage I'm in. And so I know it. So I know what content we want to learn about. I know where the problems are and all that. If I was trying to predict other markets that I'm not in, it would be hard to serve that.
I'm actually doing an op-ed piece right now for a magazine, and it's centers around leadership. And one of the pieces that I've suggested to the originators of this is that I have my own definition of leadership, but it varies from individual to individual, right? Even just like you ask anybody how to define leadership, there's a completely unique space. So first, I'd love your permission to get your take on what leadership is, and because what I want to do is I said I'd like to collect from 10 to 15 CEOs and leaders who are in positions of authority, subject matter expertise, thought leadership, et cetera. And I'd like to hear their take, and I want to incorporate that into my article. So first, your permission to use your feedback,
Yeah.
and if that's cool, how would you define leadership? What does leadership mean? Because it's a very it can be very like vacuous term to some people.
Yeah. No, an amazing question. And I don't have like a canned answer whatsoever because I think it's like we were just talking about, it's so applicable to what area you are leading. Are you like leading in your family, in your business, in your community, even like leading for yourself? Like,
Yeah.
that conversation you're having in your head if you're second guessing yourself and you need to get over it and do the right thing. And like, I've got someone on each of my shoulders every day and I need to lead the right one. But I think at the end of the day, it's actually comes down to, and like, I'll be very honest. I only know my perspective of the world. I don't know shit. I only know how it's operated, in my world. Um, but I would say leadership to me is like knowing where your strengths are and knowing where other people's strengths are and making sure they all come together in like the way that works well. Like I spent a lot of this morning thinking about my team and like, do I have each person where they shine or where I'm forcing them to go? And like I find myself going against the grain sometimes and doing things that aren't my highest leverage activities because I just have a lean team for what we're doing and I want to be there. And we're not always going to be with enough, financial and time resources to only live in our perfect little zone. But I think bad leadership is putting people in positions, whether it's in a community or a team or whatever, that aren't their strengths because you're the leader and they have to follow your lead. And so, like, people say leading from the front, which I think is important because you need to lead as the best example of the values of how you participate, behave, and moral compass and things like that. But actually, there's almost this like leading from within. Like I've been practicing in our team meetings and in conversations, trying to speak last because I think leaders do carry this power because they're the ones who either get reported to or they get their checks from or things like that. That if you don't make the space for people to be the best versions of themselves and excel, you can almost dampen that light. So you have to be willing to let them fodder and like get to the point of it, and you have to be patient in order to do that. And when you have a way that you can help, you help, but you kind of have to be patient enough to let those things shine. So just that one tip I got from someone actually at Hilton Head, it's like, hey, in the meetings, just try to, if you know the answer and a question that comes up in a collaborative meeting, like go last and
Mm,
see if it gets answered and you can refine. You don't need to like almost the best leaders don't even have to be seen as that good at what they do. It should
yeah.
almost just be they're just there and it happens kind of secretly, in the background.
I had a mentor many years ago. I worked in the corporate world straight out of college, and I had a mentor, phenomenal leader, phenomenal executive, and he said the same thing. He said, I asked him because he was always running these meetings, and his meetings were always so efficient. And you go to other meetings, and corporate life is like literally just one fucking meeting after the next of just nonsensical, literally just nonsensical stuff. And so I asked him once early in my career, I was like, how do you have such successful meetings because his meetings would be like 10, 15 minutes sometimes in and out. And he
Hmm.
said, first of all, always have an agenda, which I always love. Sort of like have an idea of what you want to accomplish from the meeting before you go into the meeting, and let everybody know ahead of time. Like this purpose of this meeting is X. We're going to accomplish, if we can, this particular thing. And then he said the same thing you just said. He's like, let everyone else talk first. Listen, talk. He said, talk last. Don't provide any input. Let your people, let your team, let the members who are in the meeting sort of provide the feedback, and then you're armed with information if you need to be reactive, which is the first piece. But secondly, you let other people have the stage, if you will. And I always love that advice. It was really cool that you said that. In terms of, I'd like to switch gears a little bit because one of the things I really like to focus on in this podcast is the tangible and the intangible aspects that leaders bring to the business that they're operating. And so part of that is sort of like your superpowers and the things that you bring to the table. And so far, there's a lot of things that I've heard from you: passion, pursuit of following dreams, having a system in place, but not following a core system where it becomes overly systematized. But another thing that I've always loved, and you said this in a meeting I had with you last week, is this whole idea of like, you believe in the blue ocean, which is the collaboration. Like there's no such thing as competition to you. Like everybody has an opportunity to get something out of it. And so
Yeah.
you have a lot of different assets that you bring to this. But if you had to sort of like look at you, Hollis Carter, as an individual and just sort of say, this is my one single superpower, what is that? What would you say that is?
I love that you're asking me these questions because they're forcing single topics and when you're in the grind zone so much you don't even have the privilege to think about your ways of being. I'm just getting close to that stage where I'm starting to find that reflection. So
Hmm.
I actually just appreciate that you're forcing me to think about these things that you just sort of do day to day. So yeah, anyway, that's just a reflection that popped up as you asked. I was like, that's pretty amazing. Um,
Thank you.
the thing that I've really noticed I've leaned into, like I believe my main role in running this business is to curate and connect.
Hmm.
And I think this actually goes back to the leadership conversation we just have. Like what makes our group different is like most of these groups, it's someone's group and they're the one on stage. They're the one teaching their ways of being. I love and see way more value in bringing other people's powers to light. And so,
Hmm.
like, I think my methodology, if I were to try to figure out what I've been doing, just working and doing my thing, is finding amazing people and making sure their special thing that you're asking about is shown to others. So it's almost like a meta version of that question, where it's like I think I get more satisfaction in kind of humbly connecting others versus trying to be the expert. I had this like brief period in between my two companies where someone hired me to be their coach because they liked what I had done before and they wanted help. And I found like I could give good domain knowledge from being an entrepreneur for a long time, but all I mostly did when they had acute problems was connect them to someone else. And then I was like, oh, I should, instead of having a coaching thing or whatever for this, like I enjoyed helping them, but I'm just connecting them to other people with a good frame. Like that was all that was really happening there.
You're like a
And
portal.
yeah, it's an interesting word. Yeah. And yeah, so I think it's doing that is really key.
I think one of the things that fascinates me about your concept and just and this is really the second time I've had an opportunity to really talk to you is the fact that you're bringing into an a sort of a microcosm of really powerful people that are doing really powerful things. But somehow or other, these people check their egos at the door. And I wonder, is it a byproduct of the nature or is it a byproduct of the nurture in the fact that you are cultivating this pre-advanced screening these people, or is it just a combination of both? I don't know if you've reflected on this, but it's sort of
I
like
have deeply, yeah.
I'm a people studier. Like I just love sitting back. I don't know if you I didn't get an opportunity to spend much time with you other than volleyball, but I just love sort of sitting back and watching people because I can learn so much in those moments to see how people engage and what they do and what they say, and so I'm imagining you're sort of the same way in that space.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I'd much rather. It's funny. We have a joke inside the business that back of house is way more fun than front of house. Like
100%.
just the dynamics of from application to what they fill out on the intake forms to the questions they have to then how they actually are to how they respond after. Just watching it all unfold is like this beautiful thing. Like, and there's so many things other than the financial side of the business that I enjoy so much more. Like, I literally can say I met my wife, five of my best friends, and have almost this insurance policy against any shit the world can throw at me where I've got someone in my phone to call because of the group, which is really cool. To your question of that, there were stages of it. So at the beginning, tons of nurture. So like we had to be, like I said, we made tons of mistakes curating it and figuring out the methodology of how do you set the tone before they even arrive and listening to what their expectations are and sometimes being, hey, that's not what we're about and things like that. Um, how we even do things to like transportation and how like little teeny touches to create the flow and how it works. So essentially like the beginning stages, it was pretty scrappy. Like we made mistakes. Like there was a big name guru person who talked well on the phone, but we brought him and it was just the wrong fit. He had that stink of ignorance. And, I went up to him at dinner the first night. I was like, hey, I went ahead and refunded all your funds, but we're gonna call it in the morning. You can just head out of here.
Wow,
And it's
that's a
like,
ballsy move.
a person who probably would have been paid normally a lot of money to come to these, it just wasn't right. And it was that one egg can spoil the bunch of a whole thing. And we were working at a greater thing. Um, Now, what's really interesting is there's like an internal line in the business, which is like the current is strong. So I do believe there was probably some folks there who might not have been a perfect fit, but the current of kind of like giving first and checking your like ego at the door and things like that is so palatable now because we've put in 10 years of work at it that it sort of self-corrects. Like we couldn't miss 20%, but we could now miss 5 to 10, and I think it auto corrects, and then we just
Mm.
don't invite people back if it didn't feel right. Um, so yeah, the current is strong is like super important, but you have to build the current first in order to do that. So like I think all my analogies end up being about skiing or surfing or river stuff, and that's like a river one. Like the current is strong, it's going to take you where it's going to take you. And at the beginning, that current wasn't strong enough, so we had to be overly diligent of that stuff. Now the amount of members who've been in for 10, 8, 9, 7 years, like they set the tone. And I'm actually in a full kind of branding reset with new core values that we're doing. And like it's evolutions.
Mhm.
Now it's more the opposite. It's about new people coming in, not feeling like they're walking into a family reunion where they're not accepted, where before that wasn't the issue. And so now, at this next event, we have a whole bunch of stuff more around how to cater to newer people coming in, how to get them into the current faster, since there is such a strong sort of camaraderie of people seeing each other for a repeat time and things like that. So kind of just always seeing where those weakness pieces are. But I think at the beginning it was a lot of nurture, and now the nurture has created a nature that, um, I actually view as our highest value piece, which is done without me being one of the leaders of a group that is on stage and doing a lot of things. Like it's funny, we launched the app in a minute. I still haven't posted like the intro video because I'm so not the face person. I made like five of them last night, and I can't bring myself to put it up. But I'd rather see the other people rise and just kind of be the guy behind the scenes helping out.
Well, that says a lot about you. I love how you said you were first nurture and then it's nature, sort of that whole idea of nurture leads to nature. That's a pretty powerful statement. You do use a lot of references when I go to, and you still have more time because I've got about 15 minutes. I still
Yeah,
have
yeah, we're
things I'd
good.
like to
Yeah.
ask you if you don't mind. Thank you. We're talking to Hollis Carter, by the way, if anyone's just sort of like jumping into the middle of this podcast, and he's the CEO of Baby Bathwater and just a phenomenal organization. And I've been a privilege to be part of it. This past October. But on your website and a lot of references, and you just made one yourself, you sort of talk about this skiing and water. And I was like, I love to read the Tao. I'm not sure you're familiar with the Tao Te Ching. And
Hmm.
he's like, he's always talking about be like water, right?
Yeah,
Flow
be
like
like water,
water.
my friend. Yeah.
Yeah. In terms of, and I want to sort of step back in terms of the trajectory, because you've talked a lot about the process, right? And all the lessons that you've learned along the way. And this whole idea of nurture has led to your nature, right? Would you tell if you had the opportunity to sort of snap your fingers, knowing what you know right now, would you still take the entire journey on that you've taken versus snapping your finger and having the exact success starting where you are now and moving forward?
Well, absolutely not. I think it sounds wonderful because of the experience I have is the only reason I'm capable of doing the
Hmm.
things.
Hmm.
There is no shortcut way to have that happen.
Hmm.
And because of the privileged spot I have to watch so many journeys of people, a lot of people way further ahead than me. I am now their customers to me, which is really, really cool wisdom kind of learning spot. The ones who've had success too early, too fast, almost always self-sabotage because they didn't get the experience and like the lessons that were needed to handle it. And I've seen it a bunch. I did some really aggressive shortcutting to build what I thought was like the house I wanted to retire in. I just wanted to do it early because I'm like, fuck it, I want to do this early, and I went all in and overly leveraged myself to build this amazing ski and ski out house and go move into it. And it's funny when I got that dream that most people get in their 60s or whatever in the American way, I was like, oh, I don't even actually want this. And it was like funny. I built the end result super early and then got to it and was like, oh shit, I actually like the grind. I like some of these other things, and there's no shortcut. It's like if someone wants to be completely shredded and jacked overnight or rich or whatever, like without the compounding day-to-day factors that, have to go down to make it happen, it's just it's just not gonna sit right. There's no it's all dual in my mind. Like you can't have the good without the bad. You can't have the results without the time.
Hmm.
And I think we live in a world where we want to shortcut it. And man, I have days when I'm tired, and man, would I love the end of the shortcut. But when I'm well rested and feeling good, I know my answer is no, I actually wouldn't want that.
The process itself. We live in this nation of this sort of idea of like instant gratification. Like everything we have is at our everything we need is at our fingertips, from
Yeah.
groceries to technology to ideas. Like AI now has literally made authors of everyone overnight.
Hmm.
And one of the things that I'm fascinated by is this sort of this idea of trying to reject the process. And one of the things that I work on in my coaching business is this intersection between personal development and professional development, sort of how the two go hand in hand, and you can't have
Hmm.
one without the other, right? And so entrepreneurship is that way to me as well. It's sort of, it isn't just about building a business, it's about building yourself. And part of building yourself is like investing in yourself, investing in the process and learning to mature and grow and matriculate. And that takes time. And don't have the, a lot of people don't have the patience to invest in themselves. In From your perspective, if you can just sort of speak to that for a minute, how important is it for especially early entrepreneurs to understand that who they are as an individual is how they're going to show up in business, and how critically important it is that they take some time to understand who they are, what do they believe in, what do they stand for, and how can they take steps to improve who they are, because it's only going to show up in a compounded level with their business.
That is a lesson I would have loved to have the shortcut on, and I don't think you get it.
Download from the Matrix.
Yeah, no, for sure. Because honestly, I would say having two kids and shift in my life and a handful of things showed up that a lot of that showed up when time got compressed. Um, and I had this period of time with my second child where I consumed so many books because like she just loved going on walks and I was putting her in a backpack and hiking a mountain for sunrise like every morning. I did like 60 something of those every morning. And part of that was I got to consume a ton of audiobooks. And one of the things I did was consume things that I'm not very religious and things like that. So I actually tried to listen to things that conflicted with my view because I always listened to stuff that just made me agree with
Sure,
myself already.
sure.
Tons of
Cognitive
Alan
bias too.
Watts, yeah, tons of Alan Watts and Hunter S. Thompson and all these, things that agreed with my sensibilities. So I started listening to a bunch of Jim Rohn,
Oh yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
the goat, and he talked about what you just said a lot, which was essentially like work on yourself more than you work on your business, and the business will take care of itself. Yeah, exactly. And so I ended up resonating with a ton of the stuff. I have endless notes in my little notepad from when I was going on these hikes and listening to that, and I've repeated it like 5 times. But the core principle I took is like I started to feel the compounding effects when I started taking better care of my health and myself and how I would show up for other things. And I think growing up in the South and like the grind mentality that I had for like 20 years, it was like all self-sacrificing. And there are times where you just got to do the work.
Mm,
But um, that principle that I kind of got installed by Mr. Rohn and just getting beat up in life and figuring out, like I remember in my software company hitting a burnout, and I installed this rule of Sundays are my day I'm not going to work. I had never had a massage before. I started booking like a massage and doing self-care and getting into all this woo stuff, and it was amazing. But it was done as a self-indulgent 20 something with no responsibilities, with a successful business and all these things. Then when I had to figure out how to fit that in with a family and a team and a business that actually required more of me, that point that you made became even more salient.
mm,
And it was like the little things that I could fit in to make sure that I have my own sort of philosophy of my moral compass and the things I need to do so that I can show up for others. Which, when we were talking about leadership, it's like, yes, I want to be a collaborative leader and help people by all means, but not at a sacrifice of my ability to be sturdy. And I
mm,
think that's kind of like my three words for the year this year are like, sturdy, leverage and systems. And because I am a very, you know, optimistic, visionary, run and gun, it's all going to work out kind of guy. And now things have gotten bigger in my life. And I'm like, oh man, I need to empower the people who empower me. And in
mm,
order to do that, I need to be showing up and sturdy and available for them. And in order to do that, I have to think about leverage and what systems, like I'm the worst in my team and I'm trying to get better. Like they all have systems. They use Asana and Slack and they have project managements and SOPs and playbooks. And I'm like the run and gun guy who doesn't do any of it. And so I'm almost like working against the grain, not seeing the vision come because I haven't been willing to tweak my life philosophy of how I operate to fit into the thing I built for
mm,
myself. And there's been stages of that. I used to never be allow myself to be scheduled on a call because serendipity had created so much value in my life. Like I don't know if you remember the movie Donnie Darko. I
yeah.
used to always picture that little tunnel the drishti that comes out and following it. I was like, I just want to follow that because who knows I'm going to meet on the street in front of the coffee shop or on the chairlift or in this place. And those are the moments I don't want to miss out on. Then my life got a little bigger and structure actually became freedom to create serendipity. And that was like a massive shift.
Mm,
Now the new shift is really around empowering those who empower me. And yeah, a lot of that comes to having your own life philosophy and, making sure that you take care of yourself in a way that allows you to be the version you want. And you're the only person who's going to have those conversations in your head. I think when you asked about leadership, I'm like, I think that the main leadership goal is like, how do you lead yourself?
mm,
And you need principles, just like everyone needs core values for their company to run and know how to make decisions. You actually have to develop those for yourself. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs think of that last,
mhm,
and they usually don't develop it until they have so much responsibility that they don't have another choice.
mhm. I learned that lesson the hard way as well, and I got divorced because of it. I had not really ever taken the time to think about who I was and how I wanted to show up in the world. And as a result, I was sort of focused on monetary value and big house and big cars and like sort of this idea that society viewed you as this successful individual.
Yeah.
And There were other reasons that we got divorced, but at the end of my divorce, I was forced to sort of, and I'd never really had many failures in my life up until that point. But when I got divorced, I was really forced to come to terms with myself of like, what was my role in it? And I had never stopped to ask those questions. What was my role in this particular situation? And when I started to really kind of dig back the covers on that, I realized, wow, man, I really wasn't a very good husband. I was kind of a dick. I was kind of an asshole. I wasn't a good partner. I wasn't loyal. It was just a lot of different things that just were not adding up. And it was really, it was sort of like a come to Jesus moment for me. And it led me into this trajectory that I'm on now, which is like, how can I show up as my best version in every possible way and constantly questioning, am I doing what I need to be doing? Am I living by values? Do I even have values? I was like, I had never done a values exercise before. I don't even now I sell a values exercise to my clients. It's like, how do you define who you are and how you show up in the world? And it's led me into this space where I now operate, which is if you want to build a successful business, you have to build a successful person first. Like they
Yep.
go hand in hand. It's like it's a non-negotiable. And if you're not drawing the line in the sand on that one, you're going to be in just a shitstorm at some point, regardless of how successful you are right now.
You're preaching the truth. It's
Yeah.
so real, and a lot of people don't find it out. And like, I've seen it in personal and business and all of it. Like, I'm like, oh, have they found rock bottom yet? Because they're gonna have to find that so they have something to jump off of to get back up to air. And
Yeah.
usually that's where those breakthroughs, happen. And unfortunately, that's just how the world works. And I do believe it happens in a very seasonal and cyclical way. And we're in control of some of it, but not all of it.
100%.
But those little behaviors, I think, rack up so much, and that is a personal philosophy that you can figure. I do believe we're all born with a moral compass. I
Hmm.
do believe that we know what's right. It's the only thing we have really is choice. We can get into free will is a whole other thing, but like
Hmm.
you start with like the little things. Like for me, I'll like think about I now have two daughters and wife. Like the toilet seat is a very small thing that can be done, but that simple action compounds into, oh, I need to respond to this email. I'm getting tired. I should do it. That builds on it. I think all those little actions literally build up. I have this new little micro practice. Like I was at a conference I was speaking at in Columbia, Missouri, and I was running on the little river trail before my talk, and I picked up like two pockets full of trash. And that's because I've now programmed my head. If I pass it, I'll actually eat it myself so much knowing that I should have done the little thing that I didn't do. And that was like a behavior that I remember building like years ago. And now when you see the little things, I literally think of like the almost the karmatic impact I'm going to have on me if I don't do it eats up more than if I just do the fucking thing. So I
Hmm.
just pick it up.
Yeah.
And I think those all compound into bigger things if you can focus on them.
I just want to reiterate one thing you said because it's really powerful. We can't control everything, especially circumstantially, that happens to us. There's just many things that are out of our control. But you said it, we always have a choice in how we respond in every situation. Like
Yeah.
that's the only piece we can control.
Yeah.
You talked about values a minute ago. I'm just curious if you wouldn't mind share sort of with us and my audience, what are some of your line in the sand values that are like, this is it. Like this is what I believe, and no matter what you say to me, I cannot adjust this. I can't monitor this. Sort of like picking up the trash on the runway.
Yeah. So I mean, I would say, what's really present for me is sort of like the ones we're having as a team as we
Hmm.
operate. And so I don't know if you know the movie like The Lorax or the book that now
Hmm.
is the movie, the
Yeah,
Dr.
yeah,
Seuss.
yeah.
So like bettering and bettering instead of biggering and biggering. So like a constant thought around bettering. Like I won't do something again because it's easy unless I do it better than the time before. And so I have literally killed projects and ideas in the company. If it's just like, hey, we went to this place, we hosted the event, it was great. I'm like, will it be better when they come back? Like I have like 20, the event you came to in Hilton Head, I have like 20 things we're going to do to upgrade it the next time.
Hmm.
And if I can't do it better, I'm just not gonna do it because I love that. Like we are a species who have evolved. And if the things we're working on don't evolve as well, it's quite uninspiring to me. So I think like that is a huge one. A really interesting one I've been playing with is like a family one is we don't say nice things behind people's backs, which is like a
Mm,
funny
I love that.
juxtaposition. So like now if I say something really kind about someone in a conversation with my wife or someone on the team or a friend, I make a note to make sure we let that person know. And that's been a really fun new value we've installed, and I've watched it kind of trickle out. And I'm actually putting that into the community now as a really fun way, so that we're not just reaching out when we need stuff. We're also letting people know where they're valuable.
I love that one. If I may interrupt for a second, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine recently, and he was sort of like confiding in me that his wife really doesn't want to have sex with him anymore. And so I was just sort of like trying to get to the bottom of it. And I was like, bro, you've gained about 100 pounds since I met you 10 years ago for starters. So,
Yeah.
and she's fit as a fiddle. So like, there's a little bit of a process that you might want to took there. And then he was talking a little bit about how he's not getting any like feedback from his wife. And I was like, when was the last time you gave your wife a compliment? Or just like literally without expecting anything, just sort of like said something to her. And he's like, you know what? And I really haven't said anything in a really long fucking time. And I was like, well,
Yeah.
let's just start there. Two things that you can control right now. Go get your fat ass off the beer and into the weight room. And secondly, start talking nicely to your wife and see what happens. And it was just like this light
Yeah.
bulb went off in his head. So it's just really phenomenal. I love that. Anyway, any other value? Sorry to interrupt that.
No, that's good. I think one of my other ones is, just showing up for the people who said you're going to show up for. Do what you're going to say what you're going to do.
Mm,
And that's a big one. Which one of those is I do have a team meeting here in about, I think 2 minutes ago that I'll probably need to get to. So, yeah, I think that's, would love to wrap it up so I could show up for my team on the time that I said I'd show up.
I love it. All right, I'll let you go. One last question.
Yeah.
If you had to leave the planet today, the mothership is floating above you,
Hmm.
and you have to give us some Hollis Carter gift that we can consume as the legacy. What is that gift?
Experience above all. So we only have our experience. So when you ask the question of would I trade the future success for now without having the timeline I would do, like I wouldn't have that without the experiences I've had. Also, when it comes to how I use my little freedom units, money and how we exchange it, like we are unlimited on our budget for health and experience, but material things and other stuff, it's not. I think
Mm,
it's really all we have is our human experience.
mm.
We don't know what's next. We don't know what was before, but we only have our experience, and you got to do it with people who light you up. And I think experience is it. And I think in the world we live in now, we're getting pulled away from that pretty regularly
Yeah.
through AI and social media, all these things. Like it's designed to pull us away from the one and most important thing, which is like those hard licks we take to become the people we are. Those are the experiences that make us great. And we're just trying to shortcut it and make everything easy. And also like the reason I like all these adventure and nature things, it's like it's so simple to do it, but it adds so much intrinsic value and it's real.
Dude, this has been a real conversation. I really appreciate the time and energy and honestly some of the amazing feedback that you've dropped. So thank you for your time. I know you've got to run. I'll drop you a note, just kind of let you know what
Yeah,
happens next,
please.
but appreciate you being here, bro.
Awesome. You got it, brother. Thank you.
Take Hollis, thank you for taking us inside your world and sharing your journey with such genuineness and authenticity and depth and meaning. And I have a list of really cool holicisms that I wrote down. And I think the one that really stuck out to me the most, and it centers around my idea of being a possibilitarian in every moment of your life, is that bettering and bettering instead of biggering and biggering. And I'm going to use that in a post today just because it really touched me. I also like the idea of nurture leading to nature. And it's a phenomenal lesson to all of us as entrepreneurs and as humans that we can't shortchange the process. And who we are today is because of the very process itself. It's because we took the time to nurture and have the experience and make the mistakes and hopefully learn from them, become a better version of ourselves so that our nature is what we nurtured. And so it's a really fantastic lesson from Hollis. And thank you again for showing up. And for anybody who wants some more information if about Hollis Carter and I always jokingly say Bed Bath and Beyond, Baby in the Bathwater. You can go to their website, just Google Baby in the Bathwater Retreats, and they'll pop up. Um, and you can learn more about his. I think they're doing two or three now a year. I went to the one in this past October, just phenomenal. Met some phenomenal people, made some phenomenal connections, and I'm still engaging with them today. One of them is I'm working with in a business capacity. So thank you, Hollis. Thank you, Bathwater, for these connections. And for our listeners, I hope today's conversation inspires you to think differently and think differently specifically about your own journey because what's holding you back from creating something truly meaningful is literally on the other side of this possibility of the experience itself. And how can you take the first step toward breaking free and building the life and a business that align with who you truly are and scratch your own itch, as Hollis said at the beginning of the call. If you want to learn more about Baby in the Bathwater, again, just Google them, Baby in the Bathwater. Check out their website. They have a phenomenal program. And before you go, please, this is my imploring you request, don't forget to subscribe to the channel here on YouTube. Follow us on Apple, Spotify, wherever it is. Leave me a review, man. I want to hear your feedback. Do you like the show? Do you not like the show? Is there any way I can improve it? Do you want to see specific type of guests? And share this episode with someone who really needs to hear it. Someone who needs some inspiration, perhaps, or who needs a different perspective on something, because that's what my guests do. They come on the show and they give me an alternative perspective and a unique purview of how they're living their lives. And if you're ready to dive deeper into your personal brand or your personal development, and there's a conversation on the other side of this podcast waiting to happen, whether it's with me or with Hollis or somebody that I can connect you with, I would love to have the opportunity to learn a little bit more about you and what you're doing in the world and how you're showing up and what problem are you solving. And if you need some help with that, I might be able to help you on the Brand Storyteller. Go to the Brand Storyteller is brandstoryteller.com. Drop me a note and let's connect. Hollis, man, I appreciate you, bro. It's been a pleasure. The show ended too quickly. An hour was not enough time. Thank you for joining me here in the lab today. Until next time, I'm Deevo. I'm honored that you took the time to listen to this show. This has been a fantastic episode as always, and I will see you on the other side. Thanks for tuning in to the Branding Laboratory. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe and leave a review. Connect with us on social media for more branding tips and insights. And remember, your story matters. Until next time, keep building and sharing your unique brand story. I'll see you soon. Thanks for tuning in to the Branding Laboratory. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe and leave a review. Connect with us on social media for more branding tips and insights. And remember, your story matters. Until next time, keep building and sharing your unique brand story. I'll see you soon.